For those who join us now, welcome to MIPCOM and this keynote address. My name is Jérôme Delay, and I'm the head of the Entertainment Division at Win Media. For our last Media Mastermind keynote session of this morning, I am honored to welcome not one, but two masterminds. The President, Head of Programming for TNT, TBS, and Turner Classic Movies, Michael Wright, and Emmy and Golden Globe Award-winning producer, founder and chairman of Electus, Ben Silverman. Since joining Turner Broadcasting in 2002, Michael has overseen the development and production of such hit TNT series as The Closer, Rizzoli and Isle, Falling Sky, and Dallas. Among his accomplishments for TBS, he has built a prime line lineup that ranked #1 on basic cable with young adults that includes the original series Cougar Town, Sullivan and Son, The King of Nerds, as well as high-profile series The Big Bang Theory. Michael was also a key member of the team that brought Conan O'Brien to TBS and will launch the Pete Holmes Show following Conan this fall. Michael has also forged strong creative partnerships with some of the industry's most revered talents, including Steven Spielberg, Frank Darabont, Dick Wolf, Mark Burnett, and Vince Vaughn, to name a few. Michael will share his view with Ben Silverman, executive producer of the Emmy Award-winning NBC comedy The Office and the Golden Globe-winning comedy Ugly Betty. He is also co-creator and executive producer of The Biggest Loser and critically acclaimed show The Tudor. This year, Michael and his team have worked closely with Ben and Electus on the TBS hit King of the Nerd and the TNT's summer competition series, The Hero, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So please join me in welcoming Michael Wright and Ben Silverman.
Merci.
Hello.
Bonjour. Merci.
Good morning, Ben.
Hello, Michael.
How are you today?
We're doing great.
Good.
So I know you're not that interested in American football, but Michael's fantasy football team is 5-0.
That's
and my
right.
wife forgot to start someone, so that's how we began our morning.
That's right. We won.
Before we get into this conversation, I thought it'd be great if we showed some of the people some of what you've been working on at
Great.
Turner and TBS, and maybe we could roll the video of the TNT and TBS brand for the audience to see.
Our enemy is hell-bent on our destruction. And yet, against all odds, we have survived. And in these last 7 months, we are finally winning.
To victory, may it be forever.
Sakes, let's make a big production out of it then.
Please don't celebrate till you've left my balcony.
I gotta get back to reality.
The only hope we have of surviving is if we stick together.
Give him hell! Smile, you son of a bitch!
Laura Halsey under arrest for the murder of Brad Adams.
It's not over, Tom! You'll never win!
Don't confuse me for upstanding.
What's your first memory of me?
Go to the 5-inch.
You'll find out what a powder keg LA really is.
Wow.
Okay.
That looks awesome. So how would you describe that brand? How would you describe that?
The TNT brand has been described as smart popcorn by some, quality escapism by others, and I think that that's a pretty apt description. And what it really means is it's accessible, entertaining programming. It's not self-serious. It doesn't take itself seriously, but it takes entertaining the audience very, very seriously. We like to say to people when they come in to meet with us and we're trying to explain the brand to them, TNT programming is meant to take the audience on a great ride and land them satisfied at the end. That's sort of our approach to it. You know, as you and I have discussed at many times, when you say smart popcorn to people, I always add the modifier smart, because if you say popcorn to some people, they might think that you're chasing a lowbrow audience or something more base. And look, quality and storytelling complexity are key attributes of the brand. We want to give people a great time, but we also want to respect their intelligence. I've always believed, I've really come to believe even more of late, that deciding what you're going to watch on television is really an emotional decision. It's not an intellectual decision, I think. I think the viewer is looking for an experience. So networks that can promise a consistent experience have a much better chance of being put into that viewer's consideration set. So if you're a TNT viewer and you're watching Falling Skies, or whether you're watching a crime drama, an action-adventure show, sci-fi, whatever the genre, there's a very consistent experience. It's a very populist-themed, everyman thrill ride on TNT. And that's what we do very consistently.
And you've been incredibly successful doing it. Now, how do you differentiate TBS and TNT so that you're not almost competing with yourself?
Well, it begins right away with TNT being known as the drama network and TBS is the comedy network, which I always find, I think that's a great distinction for viewers and certainly for advertisers. The truth is, as you well know, and people in the audience know, great drama has a lot of heart and humor in it, and great comedy has a lot of pathos in it. But for the purposes of branding and describing what the networks are to the viewer, one is a drama network and one is a comedy network. And TBS is also younger. I think TNT they're both 18 to 49 networks. TNT chases a slightly older audience, where TBS is a little bit younger and a little more dual. But both chase that populist, everyman audience and aim to entertain and take the audience on a ride.
Now, you were at the forefront of bringing big-name talent to the television screen. We're in this, as the group before us spoke about, this golden age of television, where significant storytellers and actors and actresses are coming into television in a way that they hadn't previously. You know, I think there was a long period of time where there was a real distinction, and as two reformed agents, we'll admit it, ex-CAA, ex-William Morris.
Even worse, former actor who then became
an agent. I mean,
who then became an executive.
Yeah, full schizophrenic life there.
Right. Burning a television.
Hating yourself, firing yourself, hiring yourself, promoting yourself. But you know, the level of talent, and I think one of the things that you did that really pioneered it was in the episode orders, in how you initially got Kira Sedgwick, who was the biggest get at that time, into a television show, and then subsequently followed it with the Steven Spielbergs and the Frank Darabounts and et cetera. How did you guys come up with that plan, or was it luck, or was it, you know?
No, there was definitely a plan. I think that what we tried to do is take advantage of a lot of the freedoms that are inherent in this whole business of cable television. And it's funny because when we first started doing this, I remember it was 2003, and TNT to that point had done 5 TV movies a year. And it was decided by the people who decide these things that we should get into series television. And the first thing they did was look all around town for a series executive, and nobody wanted the job. So they looked at me and they said, well, I guess you'll do. It's such a marvelous ringing endorsement. I think what they said was, we're going to give you this job. Try not to screw it up. So, but then I remember literally driving all over town, going to every studio in LA, to the various heads of the television studios, explaining to them that TNT, not TBS at this point, but just TNT, was going to get into the series television business. And literally being politely laughed out of a lot of those rooms. Thankfully, Peter Roth at Warner Brothers said that he would help out, and a few others. But one of the things that we said from the very beginning, and we said this to the studios in terms of their talent, and to the agencies in terms of recruiting their talent, that we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're going to go out of our way to explain to you the brand, who we are, who's watching, why they're watching, the kind of television show we want. We're going to be very selective about the talent that we bring into the network, and we're going to be very specific about bringing show creators in who we think understand our brand, all of which will allow us to get out of their way creatively. So one of the things that we were trying to promise is a great experience initially. If in 2003 you couldn't promise necessarily great riches or great attention doing a cable television series, what we wanted to be able to promise was a great experience. So it began there, and it grew from there. I was very fortunate years ago when I was working at CAA. I was introduced to Brandon Tartikoff, who, as you know, I don't know, everybody here knows who Brandon was, one of the legendary programmers in America at NBC in the 80s. And I had this series of lunches with Brandon. Now, if you were in my position and you were an up-and-coming television executive, this was like, meeting one of your heroes. And I was very earnestly asking him initially for advice and how do you go about doing this? And in one of our lunches, I said to Brandon, I said, if you could do one thing to guarantee yourself success as a network programmer, what would it be? What's the one thing you would do? And Brandon said, well, actually, he didn't hesitate. He had the answer at the ready, and he said, there are actually two things that you have to do. He said, you have to, first and foremost, recruit the best talent to your network. He said, network executives do not create hit television. Talent does. He said, if you're getting the best talent to come to the network, any idiot should be able to succeed. Conversely, if they're coming to you last, you better be a genius, because the good stuff is gone. He said, the second thing you do informs the first thing. He said, you have to create an environment where talent feel that they're going to succeed, both creatively and commercially. If you do the second thing, the first thing will happen organically. So I said, well, how do you create that environment? He said, you support them creatively by being very clear about who you are and what you want to do. And you support them commercially by scheduling thoughtfully. Don't yank them off the air after the third episode's not working. Run the show. And market the hell out of them. He said, if you do these second two things, the first thing will happen, and you should be set up for success. So we've actually applied that from the very beginning. Be very clear about who we are. Be very clear about who's out there, knows how to work in our voice, and support them once they're there. And you guys have worked with us, and you know how the experience goes. So let me flip this back on you, Ben, because we've talked about our brand. I'd love to know how you describe the Electus brand to people. What are you guys about?
Well, we're consistently trying to find the best storytellers as well, and the best shows that can find the best outlet. From a supplier side, we're in an age of privilege in the amount of buyers that have emerged and the amount of people interested in investing in content. So that's a great luxury. But what we do on YouTube is very different than what we do for you on Turner and what we do on TBS. And so being able to create a filter and a brand within that is harder and harder as a supplier, because we want to make sure that we're a best of class and you can come to us for something. I think one of the things that we are trying to do is be the best partner for talent. And in a meeting, when we pitch you, we say, like The Rock, but The Rock is sitting next to us in the meeting. So as opposed to artificially discussing talent that may be a possibility but we'll never get, we actually do the hard work to engage with and work with the best talent on screen and behind the scenes. And in the case of a network like yours, we've now had this privilege of seeing how you operate, seeing how you work, seeing across Michael's organization. It is an incredible machine. He has in place top-tiered executives in every division, and they really care about every show in a profound way. And whether it's David Eilenberg, who you've just brought in to work for you, or across the board, they carry on your vibe. And one of the privileges I find in working with your network specifically is that then becomes something we can be evangelical about to talent, so that I'm comfortable introducing Marta Kaufman, who we're going to be working with on a big show. I've been prepping her about.
But you're very smart too. What I've observed, and this is not meant to be the mutual compliment society, I swear, but this actually applies, I think, to where our business is today. You actually tend to come in with stuff that's very specifically for us. I've been around long enough, as have you, where in the old days, you could take a show out and pitch it everywhere, the unit show. Now you really do have to know not just which network you're pitching to, but are you pitching to this network, that network? Are you pitching domestic? Are you pitching international? Are you pitching linear? Are you pitching, broad, whatever it might be? You have to be very tailored, don't you, to the environment to which you're selling?
Absolutely, and obviously here in this marketplace, you see we just were following a panel with somebody who runs a specific upscale women's network.
Right.
And you find networks that are targeted at young males, general market.
Right.
Broadcast in terms of the scale of the marketplace. Right. And that actually takes me to something I'm very curious about with you, which is there a difference in 2013 between broadcast and cable? And separate from how they're delivered, because I think in America it must be 85% to maybe even 90% of households are consuming their television content via a cable or satellite or broadband that can deliver both.
Right.
Is there?
I don't think for viewers, and I don't know what the age break is, but under a certain age, whether it's at this point 45, 40 or younger, I suspect it's older, I don't think viewers make any distinction anymore between broadcast and cable. It's delivered into your home the same way. The quality of the content, for the most part, is the same wherever you're going. The real differences at this point are in the business models, and I do think, and I'm not part of the broadcast versus cable mindset. I think that's sort of an anachronistic point of view. We're all in this together to a certain degree. But the business model for cable, I do think, is advantageous to that of the broadcast model. We don't have the affiliate relationship. We have our cable operators, which we view as our primary relationship. It's a very healthy relationship. But I think there's a flexibility in the cable model that allows us to, I can run a show for 6 hours, I can run it for 12 hours, I can run it for 22. We tend not to do that, because to go back to your question before, one of the ways we've been able to attract talent to the network, depending on who it is to say, yeah, we'll do 8. We're not going to exhaust you creatively or physically, or if you want to do 22 and the show succeeds, we can go there. But so you have scheduling flexibility. And we're not yet at the point of programming 22 hours a week, 36 weeks a year. We're not even going to get all the way there. We're certainly expanding and growing the amount of content that we're programming. But we're still at a place where we can treat every show as the gem that it is, which really matters. There are no real programmers on a network like TNT. You know what I mean? There's no throwaway show that you put on Friday at 9 and hope for the best. Everything is treated like a show that you care about and you want to succeed. And I think talent picks up on that, and it matters to them. So again, you might not be able to promise the big financial back end that a broadcast show has promised, although I'm not even sure that promise is as real as it used to be. But you can promise a great experience, and you can promise, creative and scheduling flexibility, which matters. And it's been a huge boon to us in terms of the talent we've been able to bring.
It's interesting because we're in, obviously, MIPCOM and the international marketplace. And as you talk about that, as we sell shows that we produce for you into the international marketplace, there's still sometimes a question of, that's on cable. Is that gonna translate? I feel like the international marketplace hasn't quite caught up to what's happening in the U.S. marketplace in terms of that divide shrinking, both in terms of absolute audience and in qualitative.
As more cable series make the journey internationally, which they've been doing, Falling Skies is in 95 plus countries. The Closer's been a success all over the world. Rizzoli and Isles is also making those inroads. I think just as the American audience ceases to distinguish between broadcast and cable, I think the international audience eventually goes to the same place. It is one television world, to borrow a phrase that somebody used someplace.
And you've had the privilege of working with such incredible people. And anecdotally, I've asked you a million times about Steven Spielberg, just because I'm a huge fan. Yeah. But you've shared with me, and I think it'd be interesting to share with the audience about how hands-on he is in the process.
That's a great tee up, because we have been able to work with some big, wonderful, well-known names, but we also work to a large degree with a lot of people who are relatively unknown. And I think whether they are known or unknown, the distinguishing characteristic we look for, and this is really the main filter for us, is again, you go back to that very specific brand awareness at the network. We know who we are, we know what we want to do, and as I said earlier, it's not genre specific, it is tone specific. We're looking to deliver that consistent experience, and you know which writers and which show creators tend to work in that tone when they're allowed to work in their own voice. So a guy like Steven Spielberg, his brand is pretty close to ours.
By the way, I think it's very rare for Steven Spielberg to be described as a guy like Steven Spielberg, right?
Well,
I think we're in a singular.
No, but here's the thing about it. I mean, I think that's what makes him such a great storyteller, because he does have that everyman spirit about him. When you work with him, one of the things I love about his work, and it applies to his film work, it applies to his television work, is that he still cares deeply about entertaining the audience. And again, as I said earlier, our goal is to entertain first, but we care deeply about quality and storytelling complexity. That applies to Steven Spielberg, who frankly is one of my storytelling heroes, and it is a privilege to get to work with him. And he would say this to you, this is a key point, his name and his brand, he's one of those few people, he's that guy whose name is a brand, that's only going to get you sampled for an episode or two. He will tell you that. So you can't just go out and recruit names and think that that's going to create success. What it does is get you sampled. I think if Steven Spielberg is producing a television show, or people like him, I think it helps you get that show sampled in week 1 and in week 2, but they're not going to come back to week 3 or 4 if the show doesn't work. And that's why he's unique and special. The same way Frank Darabont, who's doing a new show for us, is the same way, and some of the other, I suppose you'd call them names that we're working with. These are people who are giving single-space notes on outlines. These are people who are reading every draft, and you wonder, where do you find the time in the day to do that? These are very prolific, very successful filmmakers as well as television creators. But what you're really getting with Steven, or others like him, are people who care deeply about the content. He sends back, and I've teased him, this is both a great thing and a horrible thing. It's an expensive thing. He'll send back special effects 3, 4, 5 times, but that's what makes him fantastic. There's no settling. So he's the one who approved that amazing alien spaceship landing on the city? Yeah, I think that was like the 5th version of it.
Because that looked awesome.
Yeah, but again, that's my long-winded point I'm trying to make, is it's less about the name. The name gets you sampled. What you're really after are, who are the best people at communicating your brand to the audience?
When you were discussing business model around cable versus broadcast, there's been moves, and obviously, in this marketplace here, that may not have been as followed as they have been in the States, that Turner and TBS have made that are pretty unique. Turner and TBS made a big partnership with the NCAAs, our big college basketball, which is one of our sports that doesn't...
Big sports franchise,
yeah,
right.
Big sports franchise. They made a big move into basketball. They made a big move into baseball. They've made moves into golf. And they've also made moves into day parts that traditionally cable had not invested in.
Right.
You may have followed the late night conversations that have gone on in America for years, but they landed Conan O'Brien to host their 11:30. What time does it air? 11 o'clock show on TBS. How are those moves? How does the conversation go to the guy running the NBA or to Conan O'Brien's agent when you're saying, no, we want you. We know you're used to being on CBS, NBC, or ABC, but we want you here.
It's a version of the conversation we're having here today, where you're saying to them, think forward, not backwards. If you look at television today, not just cable television, but the international television marketplace. I was last at this event, I think 9 years ago. It's astonishing to me how much the business has grown and evolved. And so you open with, do you want to be on the forward edge of the business? Or, do you want to be FM radio or AM? Do you want to be digital or analog? And so I think that the really great artists and content creators always want to be thinking forward and always want to be exploring new platforms and new paradigms. And when you marry that conversation to the conversation of creative freedom and respect for the artist and a partnership as opposed to an employment situation, I think it all begins to add up to the right people to a positive experience. Before we run out of time, I would love to talk a little bit about the digital platforms, which I know also speak to this audience, but about I think there's a creative storytelling revolution going on right now, certainly in America, and I wouldn't say it's happening here as well. I think it happened here first. I think the short order, serialized storytelling has been a staple of certainly some of the foreign broadcasters, and it's exciting to see that occurring in America right now. I don't think that the episodic drama is going away by any means.
To where Michael's going, also Turner and TBS was, I think, the first cable platform that has offered up its series to its audience online.
We were one of the first.
One of the first.
We started throwing them up. But at this point, whether it's our own website or whether it's Amazon.com or Netflix or DirecTV's VOD service or whatever, the magical thing happening right now that I think has given birth to shows like Breaking Bad and Mad Men and Downton Abbey in America or Homeland or any of these marvelously layered, complex, serialized dramas is when 24 premiered, whatever it was, 10, 11 years ago, the great fear, the great assumption in America was that this show would fail because it was so serialized. And if the audience missed an episode, they were out. And we've come full circle now, and as you see what the networks are offering up this season and in the seasons to come, the audience has so embraced this because the majority of the audience have figured out there's no missing out. You can catch up. This is the key phrase you hear everywhere. Catch-up programming, whether it's VOD, SVOD, any of the many platforms, people now know it's okay to invest in a complex storyline and deepened characters because you're never going to be left behind. I do think that, I know it's one of the themes of MIPCOM this year, and I think it's absolutely correct. And I think it also speaks to the talent that is making the journey to television because even in the best film work, you are still to a certain degree limited by a 2 to 3 hour format. And when you can say to a storyteller, we're going to give you 8, 10, 20, in success, 30, 40, 50 hours to deepen character and tell a complex story, that's incredibly appealing to people, both storytellers and the audience.
Absolutely. We are clearly, as a viewer, knowing how much my TiVo is stacked over the course of the week, living in an age of incredible choice and amazing stories, and to your point, complex stories, but I still also recognize as a supplier the value of the finished episodes in shows that are closed-ended as we look around the world. But you look at Columbo, Quincy, you look at shows from the libraries that still play, but also as a viewer, I want the whole recipe. I want all of it, the portfolio.
There's room for both. That's the best thing. There's room for both. And with the emergence of these digital platforms, it's so interesting watching how the financing of television is also evolving. We're running out of time, but we could riff on this for a while as well. Shows are no longer coming from a single supplier. People are cobbling together these shows, whether it's a little bit of broadcast money here, some cable money there, some international money here, some digital money there. It's creating a universality of storytelling and financing that is just propelling the business.
Yeah, there's
down the road.
absolutely more money in the first run than there's ever been before coming
Right.
to individual shows.
Right.
Whether there'll be a new version of Beverly Hills built off of the back ends again remains to be seen unless you're a shareholder in the platform that invests in it. I'm curious, one other question before we have to go. As your networks have grown in success, they've also grown in value, and they've grown in their contribution to bottom line. You know, what I've read that's reported, because I know it's not independently reported, you guys are a massive part of Time Warner now, and one of the key contributors. Has the corporate eyeballs on you impacted your work at all? Is it?
Interesting, not really. The good news for us is that, Jeff Bewkes, who came from HBO, his mantra is that content drives the business. If you look at the way Time Warner has been built and streamlined over the last couple of years, it's a content play. He's really built this company to focus on television, film, and now digital content. And I couldn't agree more. Says the content guy.
I'm with you.
The good news is that they are deeply and passionately committed to content, which I think is good for everybody in this business.
Well, Michael, I thank you so
Ben.
much.
Thank
I
you.
will say,
Thanks.
as somebody who has the opportunity to work with Michael and his team, he really is the real deal, and it's a uniquely gratifying experience. So I
mutual.
appreciate
Thank you,
your
Ben.
time, and I'm glad that you're here at this market. And their doors are open if you have anything to sell, as are ours.
Thanks, guys, very much.